So big welcome everybody to the Sunday Sutta group. We'll be looking at the Vedana Samyutta for the second week running, going through these wonderful suttas with the focus on teachings about Vedana, feelings, second foundation or second resort of mindfulness in the Satipatthana Sutta. So before we launch into the next sutta on the chapter on feelings, we'll sit together for about 10 minutes or so, just to arrive and give other people a chance to arrive. So have a wonderful 10-minute sit. I'll ring the gong at the end, which you probably won't hear, so I'll let you know when it's time to begin the class. we can come into the space now, having had a chance to gently arrive. And I want you to know that this is being streamed live. So if you want to sort of be invisible, don't put your video on. So here we all are. So it's very nice for this interactive session to be able to see who's here. And everyone's really warmly invited to, contribute. Feel free to share, feel free to question as we go through the suttas together. And we've got a great selection of suttas today. Honestly, I'm just going through the suttas one by one in this section of Vedana Samyutta because they're all so good and different. And there's very powerful suttas lined up for today. So we'll just see how we go. We'll do 1, we'll do 2, we'll do 3. It all depends on us. And there's no pressure to get through the material because we've got many weeks ahead of us to look at this wonderful chapter of Samyutta Nikaya. So, big welcome to Aranya Bodhi, Venerable Kachayana. Thank you for joining us today. And welcome again to everybody. And I'm now going to put the sutta up on the screen. This is chapter 36, sutta number 3. This is where we got to. Well, last week we did 1 and 2. So here we go. There are 31 suttas in this chapter. Some quite short and some a little bit longer. And we'll be looking at quite a few of them over the next few weeks, hopefully. So this one is called Giving Up, Pahana Sutta. Let me start reading. There are these 3 feelings. What 3? Pleasant, sukha vedana, painful, dukkha vedana, and neutral feeling, adukkama sukha vedana. Neither dukkha nor sukha, neither pleasant nor painful. The Buddha goes on. The underlying tendency to greed should be given up when it comes to pleasant feeling. The underlying tendency to repulsion should be given up when it comes to painful feeling. The underlying tendency to ignorance, avidya, should be given up when it comes to neutral feeling. So this tendency to greed, raga, will come up for us when there's pleasant feeling. The tendency to repulsion, patiga, will come up when we have painful feeling, aversion, not wanting. And when we have neutral feeling, neither pleasant nor painful, the Buddha says this tendency to ignorance, avidya, will come up for us. When one has given up these underlying tendencies, they're called one without underlying tendencies, who sees rightly, has cut off craving, untied the fetters, and by rightly comprehending conceit, has made an end of suffering. So this is really quite remarkable. The entire path of practice, the Buddha's saying here, to be free from all the obscurations, to have let go of the fetters, to have let go of even conceit, which is the last fetter, the 10th fetter, this even subtlest sense of selfhood, of ownership, of control, of reality. To have let go of all of these is possible through this practice of feeling what we feel and noticing the response, isn't it? So the knee-jerk response, pleasant feeling, I want it, greed arises. Painful feeling, I don't want it, aversion, or here Bhante Sujato says repulsion arises. It's a good word, repulsion, isn't it? Because, to be repulsed by something is just to literally turn away, turn our face away from it, turn our attention away. So this tendency to be aware of, and with neither pleasant nor painful feeling, to be aware of the tendency to not notice, isn't it? To be unaware, ignorance. So our meditation is really just this, isn't it? It's just this work of feeling what we feel and developing equanimity, seeing these tendencies. And in this way, then, the Buddha's saying, through this practice, we are uprooting the defilements. Vidya arises, knowledge arises. Freedom from the push and pull, freedom from greed, hatred, and delusion. So it's really amazing to me. This sutta is really saying, this is the way. It's as simple as this. So I'd like to invite now any comments, questions, reflections on this very simple but very profound teaching. We haven't yet finished the sutta. There's a beautiful verse to follow, but let's have this pause and see if there's anything for you here to put voice to. We've talked about these things really, haven't we? It's really this incredible teaching on Vedana that we're hearing again and again. 3 kinds of feelings, 3 responses. This is the place where we can break the chains. We can step out of ignorance. We can let go of suffering. So now I'm going to read you the verse that concludes this beautiful teaching. Here we go. The Buddha goes on, when you feel pleasure, sukhang vedyamanasa, vedananang apajanato, without understanding feeling, so raganusayo hoti, this underlying tendency to greed is there. It's a given. Anissaranadasino, if you do not see the escape. When you feel pleasure without understanding what's going on, without understanding this feeling, the underlying tendency to greed is there if you don't see the escape. The escape, what is the escape? It's realizing anicca, realizing anatta, realizing dukkha, isn't it? Realizing it's changing. There's nothing here to hold on to. And it's suffering. If I follow this inclination, pleasant feeling, desire arising, if I follow that inclination, then I'm just going to suffer, adding to suffering. And if we can stay steady, then the suffering can diminish. We can free up. And the verse goes on, Dukkhang vedayamanasa vedananang apajanato patiganusayo hoti anissaranadasino. In the same way, when you feel pain without understanding the feeling, the underlying tendency to revulsion, repulsion, aversion is there. It's instantaneous. If you don't see the escape, if you're not able to stay mindful, avoid reactivity. And it goes on, adukkhama sukhang santang puripanyena desitang tanchapi abhinandati neva dukkha pamuchati. I like to read these in Pali because you can see why they're verses then. There's a beautiful rhythm to these teachings in poetic form. It really is very poetic, very beautiful to recite, to hear, to take in the Pali. And here the Buddha goes on, as for that peaceful, neutral feeling, adukkama sukha, neither pleasant nor painful, he of vast wisdom has taught, this is the Buddha, one of the epithets of the Buddha, Buripanya, one of deep wisdom, profound wisdom. He of vast wisdom has taught that if you relish the neutral feelings, you're still not released from suffering. And what this is really pointing to, I think, is that as we develop our meditation practice, we experience more and more subtle feelings, don't we? You know, it's not so extreme most of the time. You know, for a lot of us, isn't it? When we start meditating, we can experience a lot of very sort of, we say, gross or coarse or very strong negative, positive feelings arising, and we sit and we learn to be steady with that. And slowly but surely, there's more peace coming into the practice, more neutral feelings, more subtle feelings. And the Buddha's saying here, don't relish those either. Don't even relish the peace. Don't hold on to it. Don't make too much of it. Just allow it when it's there. Speaking about jhana practice, when the mind becomes really one-pointed, very still, very, very, very peaceful. Not to hold on to that, not to get attached to that, to be aware we can get attached to any kind of feeling, and to be very sharp, very willing to let go, to let things move and flow. And I'm going to finish off the verse for us. The Buddha continues, Yato chubikku atapi sampajanyang narinchati tato so vedana sabba parijanati pandito. When one is keen, atapi, ardent, practicing with a sense of urgency, not neglecting situational awareness. This is sampajanya, practicing with sampajanya, with right understanding, a sense of why we're doing this, a sense of right view. That such an astute person understands all feelings. An astute person, a pandita. Pandit is a word we hear around, means wise person. In Hindi, Sanskrit, and Pali, pandito, a wise and astute person, comes to understand all feelings. We want to understand them. We want to feel them. We want to be aware of them. We don't want to make any more of them. We just want to know them as they are, don't we? And finally, last verse. So vedana parinyaya ditte dhamme anasawo kaya sabeda dhammato sankyang nopati veda guti. Completely understanding feelings, parinyaya, full understanding of feelings. One is without defilements in this very life. The asawa, anasawa, the asawa are what my teacher Goenkaji called the sleeping volcanoes, the source of our suffering. You know, the underlying greed, hatred, and delusion in the mind. When we practice in this way, we're uprooting slowly but surely, aren't we? These tendencies, these sleeping volcanoes are put out gradually but surely. And so one can become a person without defilements in this very life. That knowledge master is firm in principle. Firm in principle, dhammato, stable, grounded, equanimous, unshakable. When their body breaks up, they can't be reckoned. When the body breaks up, that's the end of it. There's no more momentum. There's no unfinished business. There's nothing left to be done. The work has been completed. Beautiful poetry, beautiful verse. This is, for me, this was a great stimulus to learn Pali, coming across verses from the Buddha, because one can, look at each of those words. There's not so many words, and really tease out the meaning. So much more, looking word by word and really allowing this form, this verse form, very concise form that we see again and again in the Pali Canon, allowing it to inform us. So everyone's very quiet and I'm talking a lot. I think I'll stop now and see if anyone has anything you'd like to share on this beautiful teaching. Simple, we've heard it before. It's really emphasizing again and again. When we look at Samyutta, Nikaya, we just get the full, emphasis on all the important points from the Satipatthana Sutta and on Vedana, this second resort of mindfulness. Linda.
Hi, how are you?
And then Kusala.
Yes, just when they're using the words giving up, is that I'm used to more hearing like letting go of emotions, like strong emotions, like whether it's greed or hatred or anger, things like that. So are they using that in the same way? That's the first part of my question. The one thing that I noticed, though, is that you don't hear as much about it in some scriptures as the part about not holding on to good emotions or like happy emotions, like peace and calmness and things like that. You have to be careful of that because, that can be an attachment too. So if you think about, you're working on the defilements, you're working on the bad stuff, and then you find out, oh, I have to worry about this too. Because that could be an attachment too. So I take it they're using that as it's like, is it similar to that where you're just letting go of basically your emotions? You notice them and then you let them go.
Yeah, thank you, Linda. Yeah, I mean, yes, to both of your points, I think the meaning here of putting aside is also letting go. And it's really interesting to consider, what is this process of letting go or putting aside? And yes, it's interesting, isn't it, to take in that, yes, the Buddha's also cautioning us, really. It's like also the positive, I would say, pleasant feelings or the neutral feelings that may have a pleasant feeling for us as our practice develops, because we start to really appreciate peace. All of these things, all of these experiences are to be let go of, not to be held on to. And fortunately, I think the practice does it for us. When we're practicing meditation, we're mindful of what's happening now, we're noticing the way things are changing, and we're not holding on to the past. Basically, we're flowing with reality. Then this happens for us. So it's interesting, letting go, putting aside. My sense is these are not active processes as much as, it's like we're setting the ground, we're setting the conditions up in such a way that these processes of letting go can happen. So we're we're basically making the determination, I suppose, not to react, not to hold on, not to make more suffering. Consciously, aren't we? We're sort of staying steady. So, yeah. Anything you want to come back with, Linda, on that?
Well, I know my problem is always holding on to memories from the past, good and bad. I try to let go of the bad ones, but I really sometimes enjoy thinking about things I used to do when I was a little bit more mobile than what I am now. Because when you have if you have for me, it's like a bad knee. There's things I can't do anymore. So I think about things I used to be able to do, and I probably shouldn't do that, but they're pleasant. So I didn't think there was any harm in that, but I guess in a way it is holding you back. You're not maybe progressing as quickly as you could if you kind of hold on to the past, or you kind of hold on even the good memories from the past. But I tend to go there. I mean, some people don't, but I tend to go, and I tend to not worry so much about the future, but look at the past and go, oh yeah, I remember when I used to do this. This was a wonderful time, or, I learned a lot at this. And, you want to have more experiences like that, but you do constantly go back and remember things you did in the past that you really enjoyed.
Yeah. Hey, Yolanda. And thank you for sharing that, because I'm sure it's a common experience. And, as people get older as well, isn't it? They often have this experience of the mind quite naturally, moving into the past, reminiscing. People love to do that. And it can bring, sad feelings, it can bring happy feelings. And I think my sense is nothing wrong, but it's like when we're practicing, we can observe that inclination, that tendency of the mind, and see, how we seek pleasure. Perhaps in this case, we can seek pleasure in that, and it's moving us away from the present experience. It's not to make a problem of that. It's just, look at that. That's interesting. Yes, we will do that. And how can I be mindful of that and just really feel it out? When the mind is going into the past, how does it really feel? And my sense is that's the way forward. It's like, just investigate that Dharma, that experience, and it will reveal, the dukkha, the underlying dukkha, which is always there, but we want to find it for ourselves, not just to hear a teaching that says, oh, you shouldn't do that. you shouldn't dwell in the past. Not just to make that like a rod to hit ourselves with, but more like, okay, well, the mind is doing that. So I know there's something about that may have a flavor of suffering. I'm not feeling it, but I'm hearing this from the Buddha. Let's see. Let's just really go for it. Dwell there and see, feel, come into the body and feel what's happening in the body. And just noticing, we find the suffering, in the pleasant when we investigate it fully. Thank you for sharing.
I find as you get older, you tend to look back more because, you've got more age-wise, you have more time from the past than you do in the future. So I know you're moving ahead, but it's like, okay, like considering my age, it's like I've got more years behind me than I do in front of me, I think. So it's kind of like you and I noticed that with myself, you tend to slip backwards into the past.
Yeah.
More often than I did, let's say I was like, I don't know, 25, 30 years old. I didn't do it that much, a little bit, but not much. And now it's more so. And, in the next 10 years or so, who knows, I'll be spending more time in the past. But yeah.
Yeah.
This is
Totally. I mean, it's,
notice as you age. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good observation. And isn't it true? We can remember when we were in our teens and 20s, that just didn't happen, did it? We're looking forward
all the time. Yeah.
So we're tending to dive into the future when we're young, and we have that kind of vitality, that kind of, situation that we're in. And then as we get older, yeah. And catching now, that inclination of the mind to go into the past, you can really work with that. And as we get older, let's not lose ourselves in our reminiscences, but rather see the way the mind moves and continue to develop this present moment awareness. It becomes more challenging perhaps as we get older, but actually that is where we're going to find our peace and our well-being, not in our memories, which are so elusive and so actually not very real at all, because often very colored perceptions.
You tend to edit your past as far as it may not have been as good as what you thought it was, but now it's really good. over time, it's gotten better or something. And so you're really not, it's sort of like almost a false impression of what it actually was. What, it was maybe okay, but now it's really great because time has passed. And I don't know what your mind does with stuff, but it tends to make things better, make more elaborate, and make it more wonderful than it actually was. And, but so
good to observe as well, see that, consider that, and investigate that inclination. What's true, what's real. Yeah, it's really good. I mean, let it all be grist for the mill, it's all good Dharma for investigation, and not to make a problem out of it, and also not to make more of it. Just let those thoughts come and go, Yeah, thank you so much, Linda, for sharing that, which is a very relevant experience for all of us.
Thank you.
I think Kusala was next, and then after Kusala, Ananaya. Kusala, please.
Hi, thank you. Oh, that was great to think about that, Linda. Thanks for bringing that up, thinking about we have more, with every passing year, we have more time in the past. And I was just reflecting, a friend had a brain aneurysm and just can't remember the last 15 years of his life. Just to think about that whole memory thing, like, what would that be like? It may be good. It may be freedom to not remember the past. Anyway, that was not why I put up my hand, but just in response to your conversation. So further along, which I mentioned this morning in our morning sit about equanimity, and I was thinking, well, with equanimity, you want to be in that neutral feelings. You want neutral, strive for neutral. And just in the sutta, it's like, no, don't be striving for that darn striving. And just reminded me of Ajahn Chah, I think, was develop a mind that clings to nothing. So that clinging to nothing, whereas I was thinking, well, equanimity, neutral. So now I have more reflecting to do.
Yeah, thank you so much, because it's a really good point. And yeah, absolutely links what we were talking about this morning. And it's like, isn't it? First the Buddha talks about the pleasant, and then the painful, and then this really important piece of teaching for us. Whatever we're experiencing, let it not be clung to. Let it move on through. Yeah. Thank you, Kusala. There's always a good bit more, isn't there? I just love that about the Dharma. There's something for every one of us, wherever we're at. Ananaya.
Well, I have the Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation, as you know, and I have no objection to what Sujata translated, although I think there's still some, for me, just some nuances or whatever that feel more complete in Bhikkhu Bodhi's than sometimes sparseness of Sujata's translation. But in reading this, the main thing for me was that, having read about Vedana, for quite some time now, but in this is the first time I recall that this is so succinctly stated, that if you experience pleasure, if you don't understand the feeling, the tendency to lust is present for one, at not seeing the escape from it. So it's like you're not just wanting to recognize it, you really want to get away from the tendency to actually, this leads to uprooting. I mean, the whole point, is of abandoning is you're uprooting and putting it aside so that it will not be in your memory bank anymore, or you're not, it won't be active in your consciousness. So I think that's really, for me, that's really powerful. And the one that Kusala was just referencing, the one of broad wisdom, meaning the Buddha, has taught with reference to that peaceful feeling, neither painful nor pleasant. If one seeks delight, even in this, one is still not released from suffering. I mean, that's so. And then what Linda was saying, I think I'm older than Linda. Maybe not, but I do believe I'm older than she is. But I for myself, it isn't that I don't think of past things, but I guess I have made a concerted effort to not do that as much. And what I find is when I'm with two friends in particular that I've known 40 plus years, so there's a lot of history there. But what I find is that when I'm at a lunch or something with them, which we do occasionally, they really get into the past. And a friend of mine who coined this phrase, I don't know that it was unique to her, but they engage in pasting, pasting, as an activity. And I mean, it's every time that I'm with, and I love these friends dearly, and that isn't the only thing, this is just occasional. But I really don't spend as much time with them as I used to, because they're still very much in the world. They want to be in the world. They want to go to the next dinner, to the next whatever, to the next biggest thing, and to another whatever. That's their life still. And mine isn't like that anymore. So anyway, so I really like how this is laid out, whichever version you're looking at, but I find this to be really very kind of like, oh, I just really hadn't quite thought about it that way. And the thing about really letting go of tendencies, or doing our best to release those tendencies and truly abandon that level of engagement with feeling.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you so much for these reflections, Ananaya. It's really kind of, hearing about your friends, and that fasting, that's really quite poignant. Sometimes with older people, we might feel, oh, it's really good to indulge in this, they're so happy, remembering past things, and and it's a difficult one, isn't it, to know how to compassionately relate to that tendency. Did you want to come back, Ananaya, please?
Yes. Now I probably lost it. I think it's also in lieu of what we're reading, that there are mind states to remember that are positive to remember. If we have had an experience in meditation that was particularly profound, or an insight that was particularly profound, and it led to a generalized, more, I don't want to say the word pure, but a feeling that is not related to any kind of clinging. You've experienced something in meditation, or you've come out of meditation, you've had an insight, and there is either a release or a flood of peacefulness, of joy, and of comprehension. Those are the ones you want to remember and return to. And there's not a problem with an attachment to that kind of a state.
That's really interesting, Ananaya. Thank you. As you're speaking, I'm thinking, there's that. And there's also, I'm reminded of, I was just saying to someone this morning, while they were offering a dana online, they offered a dana, and I was talking to them about how important the Buddha said, to recollect your own generosity, to recollect all the good things that you've done in the past, to recollect your virtue, and to make much of that. And this is something, don't we? We encourage older people who are dying. We know to, support them and uplift them. This is one of the ways we can do so, to encourage them to think back in those ways. And so it's interesting, isn't it, to consider that in the light of this teaching. I guess for me, there's a sense of, there is that benefit to recollect past attainments or past experiences that have been very supportive on the path, as inspiration for the future, and to remember our goodness and our generosity in the past. And then for those of us who are really intent on Nibbana, my sense would be to then notice, what's the effect of that? What's the benefit of that? What's the drawback of that? There'll be a benefit, and there'll probably be a danger too, and to see the escape, above all, to see the escape. And so ultimately, I think everything has to go. But as you're saying, Ananaya, and it's a really wonderful, subtle point, that sometimes it's valuable to lift ourselves or others with certain recollections that do involve considering past actions and past experiences. It's like a skillful means, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously the goal is we will ultimately let go of everything, including any kind of experience, whether it was a jhana experience or whatever. Those are all going to go. But while we're on the way to that, the experiences that are particularly peaceful, helpful, kindful, that we know are wholesome, and that we don't have, it's not a matter of attaching to them. That was made real clear too. If you're going, even though it's a past thing, you're not in present time, but if you are able to recapture that same feeling circumstance, that can really be a boost. So
yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Ananea, and also all the other points you made. Brilliant. Thank you. Cynthia.
So I had something to say like 15 minutes ago. And so let me see if I can remember it.
Okay. Thank you for your patience.
Let me rely on my past. Okay. So I think we survived as a species by relying on our memories. This is how it's so important to be able to rely on what you think you know, but yet you're constantly kind of shifting that in a way, because every time you have a new sort of, because your perspective is constantly in motion, so what you think you know is changing all the time. But there's like this, it's absolutely like inside us to do that. There's no way to stop the mind from bringing something forward in order to assess where we're at right now. I mean, it's and to decide about the next move too. I find it actually more difficult to not imagine, like plan is in quotes now in my life, is, everything I plan doesn't work. It's just sort of like an exercise in futility and a joke. But no matter how much I know that's a joke and an exercise in futility, I still do it. I still I'm going to see you on Wednesday, or I'm going to go to Sutta study this afternoon. I mean, it's just all the time. Your mind just wants to say, yes, here's the ground. I'm going to do that. And I find that for myself, that is more difficult to unhook than like a feeling. The feelings that come up, it's easier. It's kind of like easier for me to see those as something that's in motion than like an idea that I'm not sure how to explain it, but like that. So when this last bit of what Ananea was saying was making me think about when we do loving kindness meditation, that's like one of the ways that you generate that feeling too, is recollection of someone you care about, and you bring that into your heart. And so that's not the kind of feelings that you're talking about in this sutta. That's more of like an energy field. So that's not really a feeling, that's something else, because that's how you generate the whole loving kindness meditation, right? Is you start with something that you have warm feelings or something towards, right? And then you move out. So that's having to recall that somehow, right?
Yeah, look, thank you, Cynthia, for these really good points. Like, these are good questions about, okay, the Buddha said, not to dwell in the past, not to lean into the future, to stay in the present moment. He said invincibly, unshakably in the Bhattacharya Sutta. Very clear, teaching. And then what we're talking about is the natural, very normal way in which our mind will move into the past and move into the future. And I love what you said about the future, about plans. What I'm really picking up from what you said is there's such a flexibility. What wisdom is that, to recognize that, yeah, we make plans. We sort of, in a way, have to do that. And we know that they're subject to change and unreliable. And so this flexibility of mind, it's a way of letting go of the future. And in relation to the past, look, even the word sati means remembering, means recollecting, so it's a huge part of our mindfulness is to actually observe past history arising. And I think the important point is perhaps that we don't pursue the past. We don't dive into the future. We stay present. Past and future will arise in the mind in terms of thoughts of the past, plans for the future, and we know them for what they are. They're thoughts in the present. They're thoughts that are unfolding right now. They come and go. They're not personal. They're due to causes. And we can actually kind of, in that regard, we can step away to some extent. We can have space around them and we can learn from everything. It's all Dharma unfolding. But to be mindful is to be recollecting, to be recollected. We're, in a way, making peace with the past. We're, in a way, tidying up the past. My sense is the past comes in all the time. Yes, you're right. As a species, we need to remember, we need to learn from the past. We don't do enough of that. So it's not like the past is a problem. The problem is our relationship with the past when it becomes like an identification. When we identify with it, we suffer, we struggle. If we have desire for it or aversion towards it, we suffer and struggle. But if we can witness it, witness past memories, witness future plans as they arise, this is the way to let go of greed, hatred, and desire. Pleasant feelings, unpleasant feelings, and neutral feelings. I have a past thought, there'll be a pleasant or an unpleasant or a neutral feeling. Can I make that more the focus of attention? And in this way, the past thoughts and memories will just move on through. We're not clinging, we're not getting stuck. That's just what comes to my mind there, Cynthia, with what you've shared. Would you like to come back with anything on this topic? It's brilliant you bring it up.
No, I guess not. I mean, that makes sense. Of course, clinging is the problem. Yeah, I think, I'm thinking about buying an airplane ticket. And I think, what if I change my mind? Which, is known to happen all the time. Like, I'm coming to Damadrini. When I come down, I'm buying a train ticket because those you can just change. And it's really, you're so close. But if you go to Thailand, you need an airplane. So, yeah, it's like, I've been nomadic for like 19 months now. I haven't had a house because my house burned down. So it's been like this so interesting exercise of just constantly staying in the unknown space because I never know where I'm gonna. Every single week I move and I never really know what is happening. So it's always an exercise. And I always find myself inside of that because I'm doing that all the time, kind of planning, but sort of like the plans have gotten so loose, just really loose.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been my lifestyle's been really like, it keeps the Dhamma really alive because I really don't know. I move every single week. So it keeps me very aware of uncertainty and and the fact that things are changing all the time. So yeah, it's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Cynthia. And I really love your very clear summary of what we've been talking about. That just really, I love that. Not to cling, just basically not to cling. Thank you for that. That's the important point in all of this. And yeah, your way of living at the moment, this very unstable and changing way of living, it reminds me of our tudong practices that we do as monastics, to up sticks and, just get out on the open road and have the minimum amount of gear and have a very open mind regarding how things unfold. Very valuable, very easy to practice in this way. And to me, it's like there's a, as with everything, there's a middle way. There's a kind of balancing act to have enough stability that we can feel safe, that we can feel relaxed, that we're not trying to, survive from one moment to the next. Just enough uncertainty to remind us of the futility of planning and the flexibility of mind that's so valuable when it comes to, relating to life and how it unfolds, but also to have just enough, that we can take care of these bodies, that we can feel a degree of stability. So it's really interesting to me. You've just brought that in for me, the sense of balance. And yeah, I really wish you well. And I think the insights one can experience living in the way that you're living at the moment are really valuable and wonderful to learn and to grow in Dharma at this time. Yeah, thanks so much, Cynthia. Kusala.
Just Cynthia brought something to mind with using the word planning. It's just a subtle shift that sometimes I like to use the word intending. It just softens the determination aspect for me around planning. I intend to do that, then it just sort of takes a bit of that edge of planning. It's just a somatic thing, but it just works for me.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Kusla. That's a really good one. Yeah. Yeah, language is important, isn't it? And the words can really give a different flavor, different feeling. And that somehow encapsulates this is something, looks like the right direction, but who knows? That's really great. Intending. I'm going to start using that. Okay, thanks everybody so much for your reflections on this last sutta. Before I move on to the next one, any other points, thoughts, questions? Okay. Ruwanthi, this morning we were talking a little bit about painful feelings in meditation. And I was looking at this next sutta and thinking, whoa, okay, this is a really helpful sutta for us to consider in relation to painful feelings. So here we go, everybody. I'll put it up on the screen. Please relax and meditate and listen with the whole body while I start reading this sutta, 36.5. This is Dartapa Sutta, should be seen. And actually, thinking of Ananaya, I'm going to go for the Bhikkhu Bodhi translation. Let's have a look at this one. It's very nice to dip into the different translations. It's so beneficial to compare. So here we have Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation of this sutta, should be seen. there are these three feelings. What three? Pleasant feeling, painful feeling, neither painful nor pleasant feeling. Pleasant feeling should be seen as painful. Painful feeling should be seen as a dart. Neither painful nor pleasant feeling should be seen as impermanent. When one has seen pleasant feeling as painful, painful feeling as a dart, and neither painful nor pleasant feeling as impermanent, one is a person who sees rightly. Such a one has cut off craving, severed the fetters, and by completely breaking through conceit, has made an end to suffering. And I'm going to read the verses that follow on from this teaching. One who has seen the pleasant as painful and the painful as a dart, seen as impermanent, the peaceful feeling, neither painful nor pleasant. This is one who sees rightly, one who fully understands feelings. Having fully understood feelings, such a one is taintless in this very life, standing in Dhamma, with the body's breakup, this knowledge, master, cannot be reckoned. So this is a really, again, very clear opportunity in this teaching for us to just to be guided how to relate to these three types of feelings. And it's quite interesting, isn't it, to be encouraged to see pleasant feelings as painful, to see painful feelings as a dart. I find that quite a helpful simile. Imagine a dart landing somewhere in the body. Ouch. Yes, that's just what it is. It's like an acknowledgement, isn't it, from the Buddha, that painful feelings are very difficult to bear. Yes. See them as that. See them as a dart. And what can you do when there's a dart? You can't necessarily just pull it out. We have to be with it. And how's that? And to see neither painful nor pleasant feelings, dukkha sukha, neutral feelings. What did he say? Can someone remind me?
Impermanent.
As impermanent. Thank you, Ruanthi. To see the changing nature there. I mean, in the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha is encouraging us to relate to all feelings in that way, isn't he? To see them all as changing. But in terms of how we work with them, then to be able to remember anicca sanya, to look for the impermanence, particularly when it comes to the neutral feelings. So what a helpful teaching. Inviting comments, questions, and Linda, please go ahead.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
So to see pleasant feelings as painful, that's again about attachment, right? Because that's going to be a tough one. Just to see that as the other ones you can do, I think, but the first one that's going to be tough to see pleasant feelings as painful. Because you don't know, it's not a normal reaction to pleasant feelings.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this is really brilliant, isn't it? To see the pleasant as painful, revolutionary, but how helpful. It reminds me of how the Buddha would talk about the gratification, the danger, and the escape in terms of our experience. So in the terms of pleasant feeling, yeah, there is the gratification. I mean, it's pleasant, it's nice, we want it, we want more of it, we want to bask in it, you know, the pleasant. There is the gratification, but there is the danger. And the Buddha would say, well, the danger of pleasant feeling, actually the anicca sanya is right there, because the danger is that they don't last. They're going to change. And then what happens? We have as much as we've relished pleasant feeling, you know, that much we're going to miss it and suffer its absence. So this is the danger. That's painful, you know.
Right? Yeah. So there's always the tendency to indulge in pleasant feelings, like, because they're pleasant, you know. There's no downside to that. It's when there's a downside that's different. Then you want to do something about it. But the other one's like, well, it's not really hurting anybody. Thinking that if I indulge in some pleasant feelings, but you know, it is attachment. So yeah.
Yeah, there's the downside, all right. I mean, the downside is just that, you know, pleasant feelings, they have that, as we heard in the first sutta, they will bring up greed for us. If we have any greed left, any defilements around desire, they'll come up and we'll want more. And it's painful. You know, when you actually observe that feeling of wanting, it's quite painful. It's agitating. It's, you know, it's upsetting if we don't get what we want. And even when we do, when it changes, which it inevitably does, then we're going to suffer the lack. So, you know, there is pain in pleasure. And this is what the Buddha is asking us to, you know, remember that, consider that. This is how to counter. To me, it's like countering. The first sutta, the Buddha is saying the result. Pleasant feeling leads to greed. And here he's saying how to counter that, see it as painful. See it as painful now rather than later. Remember now that it will lead to suffering. Within pleasant feeling, there is the seed of painful feeling. It's on the way, you know, so just to see that. And so this is, I'm glad you highlight this, Linda, because this is something to really contemplate. The Buddha telling us, see pleasant feelings as painful. How helpful. Swiftly kind of cutting through the delusion.
I was like, I probably wouldn't have done that. Like, I wouldn't have looked at it that closely. Like, I work on the other stuff. I don't. The pleasant feelings are kind of like, well, they're kind of there to like help me get through life.
Beware.
But beware, because you know there's a downside. It's just like, you know, it can get addictive, and it can be get lost in your own memories, get lost in your own fantasy land that you create in your mind. And that's the downside. And I have a tendency to do that too, where it's just a nicer place to be at times than the real world or the mundane world, but it's not real. And I still have to function in the mundane world. So yeah.
Yeah.
So you know that, but it's kind of like I still want to stay over here for a while.
You know, I'm just really touched by what you're saying, because I can so relate to it. You know, it's like how easy to fall into, just getting addicted to pleasant feeling. And we know how to prolong it and make more of it, have a bit more of this and that. We're so, how to say, fortunate that we have all sorts of opportunities to reach out for pleasant feelings to arise, you know, from what we do. And, you know, I just so relate. And my sense is, you know, what happens then is we kind of never have a chance to really grow up or something. You know, it's like, you know, it's like when I was a child and I just wanted sweets all the time. And I used to spend my pocket money on sweets and books, and I just loved them and relished them. And I thought, when I grow up and I earn money, then I can get loads and loads of sweets and books and just have such a brilliant time. And, you know, and then we get older, and it's like recognizing that the sweets in life, you know, if I just keep taking more and more, there's something very kind of debilitating about that. You know, it's like any kind of addiction. It's like a real handicap for our spiritual progress, because we're just losing ourselves again and again, getting caught up in our karma. So we're just creating more and more and more desire, and getting to know that and really growing up to that. It's not easy, but it's very freeing, isn't it? To recognize the danger, that the pleasant is painful, and to then quite naturally want to cease this kind of search for mundane pleasure. And we've all done it, haven't we? We've all got into the spiritual search. We've all understood, that this is futile and demoralizing, actually. To seek pleasure in the world is futile. We're bound to be disappointed. For me, I just recognize that we don't learn that all at once, and it's clear as day. No, we fall in and out of addictions all the time, and we just have to keep on picking ourselves up and recognizing, oh no, that's really not good for this one, and keep letting go. But to hear the Buddha's teaching here, pleasant is painful, that's a really helpful way to just remember and cut through a lot of kind of time wasting,
I know for me, it was books when I was younger, and it was books about people traveling around the world and having adventures. And for someone who's just going to school and living in a smaller city and having a boring life, this is great, and it was you could see yourself there in these different countries and on ships going places or planes and having adventures and doing all kinds of great things. And you just, in your world, or in my world at that time, there's no way I could have done that. So you do it through books. And I think that's where the seed gets planted, and then it just goes from there, especially as you get older, become an adult. You just seem to see more of the same, only now you're working instead of going to school. But you still have that kind of sense that your life is boring compared to what you read in books or what sometimes other people have done. And I think that's where it's, you keep looking back and going, well, I'm this age and I haven't done this yet, or I haven't done the things I wanted to do when I was like 15, 16 years old. So it's just, it gets planted there. And it's like, as you said, it's like they were, pleasant memories at the time, or pleasant thoughts at the time. But as you get older, then suddenly there's the downside, because it's not real. It's something that's been in your memory or in your mind, and it's, you're not getting there. So now you're getting more upset. You're getting like more frustrated with your life, which, is not good. So yeah, I know for me it was that, and it was like, that's where it started, and it just sort of progressed from there till you're finally, you're just sort of like, you're spending time like either in the past or thinking about things you would have liked to have done if you had the money, if you had the time, or you didn't have to work full time or things like this. So yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing, Linda. I'm sure we can all relate. And yes, the path is challenging. It's like slowly kind of extricating ourselves, from our habits and our comfort zones and this kind of willingness to step out of that and to step into the unknown to a great extent and to get real. And it's very beautiful that we have all these supports in the Dharma teachings to really help us, and also our Sangha, to come together to meditate, to be willing to be present with the not so interesting, with the neutral, with the struggle, with the defilements, and to recognize that actually this is there's something here for me. There's a sense of increasing well-being here. There's a sense of increasing self-respect. There's a sense that I'm using my time skillfully. And it's much more subtle than the sort of hit of pleasant feeling, but it's so much more lasting and so much more kind of all-encompassing. So this kind of peace and well-being, this is what we really want to cultivate, and we just get to appreciate it. And then we gravitate gradually more and more in this direction, in the direction of spiritual happiness rather than worldly happiness, don't we?
Right. Definitely.
Yeah.
It's just hard, it's hard to pull yourself out of that and push yourself forward because you've had so many years of like spending time there, and it's pleasant, and it's like a drug, you know, it's like you have to wean yourself off of it almost. So, you know, because you keep wanting to go back there, but you know, it's not going to be, it's not a good thing. You know, it's going to like, there'll be a downside eventually. But yeah, I know it's difficult. Yeah. It's so difficult.
Yeah. Beautiful kind of exposition on desire and how challenging it can be to work with desire and how fruitful the result. Sadi, thank you so much, Linda.
Thank you.
Samyutta, thank you for your patience. Come on in.
So I had this question about painful feelings. So, you know how some people, you know, they really enjoy pressing your buttons. They love trying to annoy you. So how can you look at painful feelings as a dart? Because if somebody shot me with the dart, my first instinct would be to try to remove it. So I would try to get rid of that dart that just hit me like right away. So can you please explain in general too as well, not just, you know, related to the dart analogy, how you can develop dispassion for painful feelings when it's like another person who's trying to cause you pain. So it's not like, oh, you know, I should have won the lottery and too bad I didn't win the lottery, so now I'm having painful feelings. Well, not that kind of painful feelings, but like, you know, people trying to press your buttons, try to annoy you, and you're, you know, having to deal with that.
Thank you so much, Samyutta, for bringing this in for us. Other people may also have this kind of experience or perception around painful feelings and the cause of painful feelings. And yeah, you bringing in the dart simile just briefly, it's such a great simile for me because it's exactly like that. It's like when a dart goes in, all you want to do is pull it out. It's obvious. You just want to get rid of it. And it's such a strong sense of wanting to get rid of. And so often we can't, and we have to be with that dart. So painful feeling then is like, requires enormous patience and goodwill, doesn't it? And acceptance. And it's, you know, again and again having to let go of aversion, let go of repulsion, see it as a dart and be willing to stay present with painful feeling. And this is enormously freeing for us, even a moment of acceptance or steadiness with painful feeling. And we're actually moving mountains, my sense is, in terms of our karma. When it comes to other people, we can have a painful feeling here, and we can have a thought about it, a very valid, realistic, true sense of why they're suffering here. But it's really important, I think, to be willing to let that story, let that reason not be of maximal importance, but actually give the most importance, you know, to the actual experience of pain. So it's like, what's happening here? What's happening in the body? Where does it hurt? Can I find a place? Can I experience a Vedana? Can I experience what's happening right here and now for me? And, you know, situations we can relate our painful feelings to something that's said, something that's done by another. And we can have all sorts of ideas about that person or those people's motivation and what's going on for them. But the truth is, you know, we can't really know that. So we've kind of moved away from what's true and valid when we start to speculate in those ways. all we can really know at the end of the day is how we feel. And if we can, come to that place of feeling the dart and giving it time, giving it space, patiently enduring, being present for that, then a lot of the complexity around suffering can fall away for us, because we're really at the place where something's genuinely actually happening. So what I'm really saying is I hear you, and it can be very difficult sometimes. You can feel people are out to get me, they're causing my suffering, but nobody can actually make us suffer. What makes us suffer is when we're feeling pain here, painful feeling. And so that's the place where we want to pay attention. And through paying attention, we'll find that there's a sense of movement, there's a sense of flow, things are changing, there's some opportunity for change to happen. So I don't know, would you like to come back, Smita? Is there anything there for you?
I would say thank you. Let me try this, and I will let you know if I can find some peace. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Smita. I've got a question in the room, but we've got Corinna first. Is that okay? Okay. So Corinna and then Anagarika Patipada. Go ahead, Corinna.
Yes, thank you. I was going to talk about impermanent feeling, neutral feeling. But just I feel like I want to bring up this word, compassion, into the conversation, and the way I'm understanding the first line of seeing pleasant feeling as painful. I'm really seeing it as seeing there is pain when there's pleasant feeling. And that might not make sense, but I was just going to share my experience of, like, Linda, some of what you were speaking about, like when there's desire and when that desire turns into clinging. Because there's just pleasant feeling just because we're biological creatures, and that's not going to change. But then when there's clinging, and it goes even further, let's say, in what we categorize as addiction. For me, that's like a red light to be like, okay, where's the pain? there's usually, when I'm clinging on to a pleasant feeling, it's because I'm covering up or making up for, or the phrase you use, Linda, like just trying to get through life to enjoy something. And it makes like just compassion really come up. And I feel that's so important, because if I don't do that, then I can have judgment, so much judgment against myself. Like, why am I doing this? It's so funny. I appreciate this group and this practice. I saw something the other day and it said, oh, this TV show is so great, it's worth binging on. And I'm like, are you kidding? Like in the world, the value is, yeah, binging on a TV show is a great thing to do. You'll get so much pleasure from it. But that's, like, for example, that's one of the things I have to be careful of, like not to watch too many shows. So it was so striking to me that, someone's like, that's a positive thing. I'm like, that's something that I'm working with, that I'm investigating. And so, but I also have this idea of, subtlety and refinement over time. So let's say I want to watch a show because there is some pain. I want something pleasant because there is some pain. And sometimes watching a show is the best thing that I can do. Sometimes when I don't have the strength to be with the unpleasant or to be with the pain, sometimes I've told myself it's okay. It's okay it's not, the ultimate thing to do, but sometimes it's so it's like it brings up more of an investigation. So what I love the previous question too from Samyutta about, how do you deal with painful feeling? It's like, and you were saying, Aya Brahmawara, it's like, look into it. I was like, that's what pleasant feeling, that's what unpleasant feeling. It makes me want to look into it in a compassionate way. That's what I wanted to share for now.
Thank you so much, Corinna. Beautiful Dharma from the heart. And I have one thing I want to come back on, which just, I'm really appreciating, like, the vinaya we keep as monastics. We don't watch shows, we don't read fiction. I don't read fiction anymore. We don't have any entertainment, and it can seem so sort of dry and, I don't know what really, because it's been so long since I've done those things, but it's a great protection. And the reason I say this is because, I totally get that sometimes to distract and to just escape from the present moment experience into some form of art or entertainment can be like, feel like the most compassionate thing we can do. And I totally get that. But what I would say is, talking about refinement, I would say, like, well, we can see, what's the residual effect of taking in what to me now appears more like the mental contents of another. When I take in some sort of art or music or something, it's really just the mental contents of another. And that's fine. But to do that, what's the effect of that? How is that? And then what is there anything I can do that will be equally relieving? Skillful means to, just be able to have a break from the difficulties of this time. And I consider things like listening to a good Dharma talk, or to go for a walk, or to something that's more like lending itself, to being also present. But you can try watching shows and still being present. Can you do that? Can we read a book and still be present? This is something to investigate. How much can I, maintain a sense of mindfulness and presence? Personally, I can't do those things. I can't watch TV and not get kind of really caught up. But I'm not saying it's not something to bring in as Dharma, investigate, see, what's the result? Because at the end of the day, I think we find what's good for us through experience. And so that just came to me, Corinna, as just a reflection on what you've said, and maybe a kind of encouragement around. And I'm sure the kinds of things that you would watch would be perhaps very suitable. It's just what came to my mind. Would you like to come back with anything, Corinna?
Yes, I would. And that's my kitty meowing in the background. Yes, and I appreciate what you're saying. And first of all, yes, I'm very picky about what I watch because of the influence. And but it's been so interesting when I've gone away from self-judgment to be like, oh, I can't believe I'm watching a show. And then the way what you mentioned about some sort of reflection, bringing up some sort of reflection, is I'm watching the show not to be entertained. I'm watching the show for the compassionate purpose of moving myself in a better direction. So as I'm watching the show, I can watch it with me as the priority, with the focus on how I feel as the priority. And I can feel sometimes how there's a shift. And it's amazing when there's a big enough shift, then the show doesn't mean anything anymore. Then I can drop it. So yeah, so there is sort of that awareness as I'm watching the show, if nothing else, the intention behind watching it, and seeing, it's almost like how many minutes do I need to watch before it has an effect? It's been a real interesting experiment.
So too. Thank you so much for that, Corinna. That's a really beautiful reflection. And yeah, totally encouragement. I mean, probably a lot of you watch TV from time to time. I just think it's a really good exercise if the TV's on, to see, can I still be mindful? Can I still be aware of the body? Can I still be aware of the breath as this watching is happening? And then we can really get, yes, Corinna, what's the benefit? What's the drawback? What's actually happening here? And everything's teaching us if we keep a continuity of mindfulness. Thank you, Corinna, so much.
Thank
And
you.
I'd like to invite Patibadar, Anagarika Patibadar here in the room. Would you mind to come close to the mic? Would that be okay? So that you can all hear what Anagarika Patibadar is going to say. Just inviting her to uncover.
The comment I wanted to make is that it's on suffering and pain and suffering. When I have a lot of body pain, and even if I think about someone saying something, I'm hearing it, and due to our past relationship with that person, I'm interpreting that information in a certain way. And with this practice, what I've taught myself to do is to stop that. Stop hooking on to the past story. Listen to what they're saying without having any interpretation tool, just listening. And when I just listen and I hear the words, what I hear is the pain behind the words. So I start thinking that pain is their pain, and they are expressing their pain to me. So in hearing their pain, it puts my perspective in a totally different place, because they're expressing it to trigger a response from me. But if I listen to it differently, it wouldn't trigger that response. I will be able to say, you sound like you're really upset about that, or that made you very upset. And so to be able to respond in a neutral way and put some space, a gap between the relationship conditioning and the response I choose to give back is a skill that we can develop. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
That is so helpful, isn't it? Samyutta, I'm thinking of you especially. Yeah, it's really coming back to what you were saying.
Yes, thank you.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you hear Anagarika Patibadar? Okay, good. Yeah, I mean, that's so helpful when it comes to the sort of situation that Samyutta, isn't it, you were describing, where we feel, people are creating pain for us, and just there's nothing to add. Just that's so helpful to be able to. It reminds me, Anagarika Patibadar, like in the Satipatthana Sutta, in that Vedana section, well, in the refrain that comes after every meditation teaching, the Buddha's saying to observe, in this case, feelings, both internally and externally. So when we can do that, when we can kind of resonate with the other, if I'm feeling pain, Samyutta, or if I'm feeling put upon by the other, can I turn the attention and just feel out, where's that coming from? Where's that painful feeling there's a painful feeling here. What's happening over there? What's happening for the other? And it really helps so much to put ourselves into the shoes, into the heart of the other. Anagarika Patipada says it usually is coming from the other. So to hear it,
and then let some space exist.
and then let some space exist after they share it, then a compassionate response to their pain. Yeah, to be able to do that. Oh my goodness, this is so valuable. It reminds me of the work of, what's his name? Rosenberg. Can't remember his first name. Mitchell? Rosenberg was teaching nonviolent communication. And he was teaching us he used puppets and the simile of the jackal and the simile of the giraffe. And he had the jackal puppet and the giraffe puppet. And he would say, well, if we listen to others, take in from others with the ears of a jackal, this is like the reactive response. And it's all about me and what's happening for me. If we can listen with the ears of the giraffe, he said the giraffe has the biggest heart of all the animals. And the distance from the giraffe's head to the giraffe's heart is the biggest distance of all the animals, all the mammals. And so can we, we hear something, somebody says something, can we just give plenty of time and let it come to the heart and listen with the ears of a giraffe, listen to the other. Where are they coming from? What's happening for them? What's their karmic predicament? What are they caught up in? What greed, hatred, and delusion are assailing them? And somehow when we have that kind of compassionate attitude, perspective, we can often find incredible resources, can't we? How to patiently endure the words of another, the actions of another when, there's pain here. Yes, I can feel there's pain here, but I'm not making any more of that. I'm opening to the other. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Compassionate listening, Anagarika Patipada says. I'll just give Smita a moment to come in if you'd like to come in with anything here, Smita.
I just wanted to say thank you both so much. Really helped me out here. Thank you.
Yeah. Marshall was his name, Marshall Rosenberg. You could look up Smita. Very helpful for dealing with situations where the relationship is causing pain. Marshall Rosenberg, nonviolent communication. Lots of material online, I'm sure. And we are over time, so do feel free, people, to leave as and when you need to. But meantimes, we have Cynthia. Let's make some more time. Yes, Cynthia, please.
I'll make it really quick. I just wanted to say that one of the images I use for when if I get caught in thinking someone else is doing something to me, which I realize it's a trigger, but what I used to do before I met the Dhamma, and this still works for me, is that I just imagine that the person is an animal with its leg in a trap. And I just feel like nobody can really be ugly to someone else unless they're in pain. So if I think about they're an animal with their leg in a trap, I know that's why they're acting like that. And it helps me to reframe it really fast into something that's not personal. It's just the person has their leg in a trap and they're in pain.
Thank you, Cynthia. I mean, what great heart that enables, doesn't it? And these are really skillful means how to deal with, sometimes people can be really horrible to each other. That's the truth. And why? Yeah, because they're suffering, they're ignorant, if they knew better, they would behave better, and they don't know better yet. how to help. To be non-reactive is so great. It requires such great heart. I think of the heroes of our time, you know, like Nelson Mandela, you know, someone who was so persecuted, you know, and who was able to still have great heart and forgive. Such an example of Dharma. And, you know, that we can be really quite revolutionary. We can really change the world through just maintaining our equanimity, a peaceful attitude when provoked, and when everything in the world will be encouraging us to fight back and, you know, what is it? Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. This doesn't work. The Buddha is very clear about this, you know. The Buddha who told us, you know, if someone's sawing your limbs off one by one with a two-handled saw, if you have even a trace of negativity towards them, you're not following my teachings. I mean, this is radical. But we can use these kind of skillful means. I really love that, Cynthia, to imagine the pain and suffering where this abuse is coming from, and to allow that to give us the resources to stay steady, stay patient. It's all it takes, and it can change so much. Thank you. We could go on. I mean, I feel we're just starting, but there we are. The time is running out, or has run out. Much
Thank
to
you
reflect
so-
upon. Yeah, Smita. Okay, we're all done, I think. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here and for your wise and insightful contributions. Big gratitude. See you all. Hopefully Tuesday night is the next teaching session. And look out for emails about further teachings.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. If anyone
you
would
so
like
much
to
for-
stay a little teeny bit longer, we'll pay homage to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha to conclude. Arahant Sama Sambuddha Bhagavan Buddham Bhagavantam Abhiwademi. Sawakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Supatipano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Sanghang Namami.
Thank you so much, Elia.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.